Alright, we are about 40 games into the season, so about halfway, and about a month away from the All-Star game already. It seems pretty crazy. It's been a wacky season with a lot of health and safety protocols and injuries and overall unexpectedness, I think, in the league. But I thought I would tell y'all my All-Star predictions as of this moment. It'll be kind of a mix between who I think deserves it and who I think will actually get in when it's all said and done, but yeah, obviously this can all change a lot in a month, but that's why they're predictions. Side note, sorry if I sound a little bit nasally, I don't have the virus, but I'm definitely a little bit congested, so let's get into it. Starting out with the Eastern Conference, at guard, Demar Derozan of the Chicago Bulls. He has been incredible this year. He's averaging 26.4 points, 5 rebounds, and 4.7 assists on 49, 35, 85 splits as of the time I'm recording this. I feel like people thought his career was reaching its twilight when he was in San Antonio, almost following like that Blake Griffin trajectory in his career right now, but he's completely revitalized himself in Chicago. He's had that clutch gene for the 27-11 first place Chicago Bulls. He had those back-to-back buzzer beaters the other week. That was crazy. He's been absolutely lethal in the mid-range, shooting 55% from 10 to 16 feet and 43% from 16 to the three-point line. He's been a good ball handler as well in the fluid Chicago offense, only averaging like 2 turnovers a game. For some reason, he's listed as a guard, although according to Basketball Reference, he plays 8% of his minutes at small forward, 77 at power forward, and 15 at center. Not a single minute at guard, according to Basketball Reference, but yeah, if he's being listed as a guard, he definitely deserves to be a starter for the Eastern Conference. I'm going to hold off on the second guard in the Eastern Conference for right now, and I'll go with the 3 front court players I think deserve it. The first one, Giannis, it's an easy decision, you know. He's averaging like 28, 11, and 6 on 54% from the field. I mean, it's been an average year for Giannis, but an average year for a 2 times MVP, a reigning finals MVP, a defensive player of the year, a member of the NBA 75 team who just turned 27. It's pretty good. I feel like his greatness is getting overlooked in the regular season. We barely even notice that the Bucks, even with a lot of injury and virus issues, are just kind of cruising at 26 and 17 with Giannis at the helm. I mean, this is a no-brainer. The second front court player that absolutely deserves it is Joel Embiid, averaging 27, 11, and 4 on 48, 39, 81 splits. Really efficient, especially for a center that's on the perimeter a lot. Despite all the turmoil in Philadelphia, we know the situation that's happening in Philly. Joel Embiid is putting up stats for a team that would probably be deep in the lottery without him. I mean, no disrespect to like Seth Curry, but there are a lot of nights where he's the second best player on the Sixers, and that is not a formula for making a deep playoff run. The Sixers are 23 and 16 as of the time I'm recording this, and that's pretty much entirely due to Joel Embiid. The third front court lock in the Eastern Conference is Kevin Durant. He's averaging 37.5 and 6 on 52, 36, 89 splits. I mean, that's almost 50, 40, 90, 30 points per game. It's another usual suspect, though. I mean, it's incredible how quickly Durant has returned to form after his Achilles injury. I mean, that's a major knee injury. He suffered on the wrong side of 30 years old, and he hasn't lost a step. He's playing some of the best basketball of his entire career these last 2 seasons. Kevin Durant getting the Nets to 25 and 14 when they just got Kyrie back like 2 games ago, and Harden struggling early during the season and their copious virus woes. I mean, this is obviously an all-star starter. He's leading the league in scoring, and he's leading his team to a good record. So those are the 4 locks in my opinion. The last guard spot is definitely a little bit more up in the air, but right now I would have to barely give it to Trae Young. He's averaging 20 and 9.5 on 46, 37, 90 splits. Very efficient, especially for a small guard that chucks up as much shots as Trae Young. Like, I think the spot either has to go to Zach LaVine or Trae Young. Despite the fact that LaVine is on a much better team, I think Trae's having the better season stats-wise, and he is ahead of LaVine in the current fan voting, so that is something to consider because fan voting is 50% of the battle when it comes to all-star starters, so I think he sneaks in. The Hawks' woes have definitely not been his fault. He's got a box plus minus of 4.5 for a team that's, you know, way under 500 to be honest, so he's not the problem. So now going with the Eastern Conference reserves, I just mentioned him, but the first guy off the bench, the first guard, is definitely Zach LaVine. LaVine could definitely be a starter when the All-Star game rolls around, creating a Chicago backcourt, which would be pretty crazy, but for now, we'll say he's number 1 off the bench. He's been outstanding this year, averaging over 25 points per game on very close to 50, 40, 90 efficiency, and that's all-time levels of scoring efficiency. That is really, really hard to do. He's shooting over 70% at the rim, 40% at 3, leading Chicago to a really good record. Easy All-Star. I mean, definitely first guy off the bench if he's not a starter. The second guard spot, I'll give to James Harden. You know, a little bit of a down year for him. 22, 8, and 9.5 on 42, 33, 87 splits so far. People thought Harden was a little bit washed with the new foul rules, causing him to struggle at the beginning of the season, but that was just some recency bias when he was struggling the first 2 weeks of the season. He shot less than 40% from the field in that first month, but since then, he's been a slightly toned down version of himself, but still the James Harden we've known for the past decade or so on a good Nets team. He definitely deserves a spot. The first forward spot I'll give to Jayson Tatum. 25.5 points on not great efficiency, but it's been a whirlwind of a season for the Celtics. The Celtics just haven't worked. The Celtics hypothetically should have 2 elite wing scorers, an elite perimeter pest on defense, an elite shot blocker, and some good bench pieces in Schroeder and Richardson, but Tatum and Brown just step on each other's toes. Tatum has to try to facilitate for the Celtics too often because they don't have a good guard, and he has to improve his shot selection. That's the biggest thing. There is no way someone as talented as Jayson Tatum should shoot less than 42% from the field. However, he's still clearly an all-star reserve in my book because of the season he's had. For the second forward, I'm going to go with Jimmy G Buckets. He's been great for the Heat this year. Everyone knows how good Jimmy Butler is with his all-around offense and his elite perimeter defense. With how he's played, he might be the easiest front court reserve to pick in the Eastern Conference. The only knock on him is that he's only played 23 games. I don't know exactly when he's coming back from his current injury. I think he injured his ankle, but he should still get in. Like I said, he's averaging 23, 6, and 5.5 on decent efficiency. He's got a 27 player efficiency rating, which is really good, and hopefully he's healthy when the All-Star game rolls around because he should get in. I was pretty unsure who to give this last front court spot to, but I settled on Miles Bridges. He's been averaging 19.5 points, 7 rebounds, and 3.5 assists on 48, 32, 76 splits so far this season. He's a most improved player front runner right now. A breakout season from Miles Bridges has him as my Eastern Conference reserve, With increased opportunities, he's evolved from just kind of like a lob threat to a much more versatile offensive player that can still explode for some crazy dunks. Y'all see the highlights.
Bridges! Oh my God!
For the 7th-seeded Hornets team, I think that's enough to get him on the Eastern Conference reserves. No disrespect to Miles Bridges, but there's definitely less competition, I think, for this spot than in previous years. Like last year, there was guys like Randall, Sabonis, and Chris Middleton that just have not been all-star caliber this year, but Miles Bridges gets the nod. For my first wildcard spot, I feel pretty good about this one. I'm going to go with LaMelo Ball. The sophomore is already averaging 19.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 7.5 assists on 42, 38, 87 splits. That's back-to-back All-Stars for the Charlotte Hornets. How crazy is that? 2 All-Stars. LaMelo Ball is taking the next step I feel like a lot of NBA fans expected. LaMelo can do everything. He's a stud. He can grab a defensive rebound, push the ball in transition, and then either make a pass in a tight window or create a shot for himself. In the half court, he operates great in the pick and roll. He shoots 38% on 7 3-point attempts per game. The future's bright in Charlotte. 2 All-Stars, not 2 All-Star starters, you're stupid, Connor. 2 All-Stars nonetheless, though. There's a lot of guys who could get this last wildcard spot, but I'm going to give it to Jarrett Allen. He's been averaging 17 points, 11 rebounds. He's been averaging a block and a half and a steal per game. He's shooting 70% from the field, which, he's pretty much just an offensive rebounder, lob threat, and interior finisher, but that's still really impressive to shoot 70% from the field. You could also give this to Darius Garland for sure, because the Cleveland Cavaliers are at the halfway point in a playoff spot in the Eastern Conference, which I don't think anyone expected. So you probably got to give it to one of Jarrett Allen or Darius Garland, but I'm going to go to Jarrett Allen just because he's really a two-way player. He can score inside on offense while being an elite defender on defense. And there always are a few injury replacement players when the All-Star game eventually rolls around, so I'm going to name a few players in terms of injury replacements. Over Darius Garland, I actually think I would be picking Fred VanVleet right now, but that could change any day. Freddie V has been really, really good in the last few weeks. He just won Player of the Week last week, averaging 32 points per game so far in January, and leading the Raptors to a lot of wins, honestly. They're a few games over 500 now, when they started the season pretty poorly. Garland, however, is definitely a capable all-star caliber player too. After being pretty awful his rookie year, Garland has made some amazing strides, and if he's not one this year, he will be an all-star in the future. I can put all my money on that. I also want to give an honorable mention to Jaylen Brown, but the Celtics do not have the record to be fielding 2 All-Stars, I think, with how their season's gone so far, so I don't think that Jaylen Brown can get it, even though he's been good from a stats perspective this year. So that was the Eastern Conference, but now we're going to go to the Western Conference, going back to the starters, going back to guards. We're going to start with Stephen Curry, the babyface assassin. He's averaging 27 points and 6 assists on 42, 39, 92 splits. The all-time greatest three-point shooter is clearly deserving of an all-star starter position. Despite Clay only finally coming back after 940 days of no professional basketball, and he looked great by the way, but that's not the point of this video. The Warriors have still been amazing. They're sitting at 30-10. I don't think anybody expected that. I expected them to be like a 6th seed this year, so I was putting some disrespect on the Warriors, I guess. Steph Curry's definitely been at the helm, but this hasn't been like a carry job, you know? The whole team is just playing beautiful basketball. He was my early season MVP favorite, but he's struggled shooting a little bit since December. But, you know, he still creates that havoc offensively. He has that gravity because of how great he is at shooting the ball, and he makes the right plays. So I think he's definitely an all-star starter. At the other guard position, I'm comfortable to call this one a lock. Ja Morant of the Memphis Grizzlies. He's been averaging 25, 6, and 7 on 49, 38, 77 splits. I mean, that is incredible. A career 32% three-point shooter has boosted his three-point percentage by over 6 points. He shot 71% at the rim for a guard, and he has, you know, those nightly high-flying dunks that you see on SportsCenter. Just the other day, he had that dunk where he almost hit his head on the rim, and that crazy two-handed snatch block. I mean, Ja Morant is beautiful to watch. This Memphis team has surpassed expectations by a lot again. They have a mind-boggling 29-14 record right now, and they're currently on a 10-game win streak. There's no way, if the All-Star game wasn't tomorrow, that you don't give this starter spot to Ja Morant. The first front court spot is easy. I'm going to give that to Nikola Jokic, who's averaging 26, 14, and 7 on 56, 35, 77 splits. I mean, that's incredible. This team has missed Jamal Murray the whole season. They missed Michael Porter Jr. for pretty much the whole season. I think he played like 8 games, and he was pretty garbage when he was playing. Jokic just flat out put the backpack on for this Nuggets team to keep them afloat. I mean, I don't want to pound y'all with advanced stats, but I think that's what best shows the reigning MVP's greatness. But look at my other monitor. Jokic has a player efficiency rating of 32.7 this year, which would be the best of all time by a fair amount. Like, that is incredible. Michael Malone, not Mike Malone, he said that Nikola Jokic is not sexy. There's nothing about Nikola Jokic that's sexy. And then he said his wife might disagree, but he just says that if you're a true student of the game, you appreciate Nikola Jokic for what he does. I mean, you don't see too many Jokic highlights on SportsCenter, but he just knows how to get it done. He scores, he passes, he rebounds, he does it all at an absolutely elite level, and that's why he's the reigning MVP and an all-star starter. For the second front court position, I think it's another really easy choice. LeBron James. He's been averaging 29, 7.5, and 6.5 on good splits this year. I mean, this is year 19. 37-year-old LeBron continues to defy Father Time. He's had to do everything for a Lakers team that has disappointed in the first half of the season. He's been willing to play center to get the Lakers to win some games, something that even 6'10" Anthony Davis has been unwilling to do at times. I should not have to convince anyone or throw anything else at you to convince you that LeBron is an all-star starter. So again, I feel like the Western Conference has 4 locks for their starters and one that's a little bit up in the air. For this final front court spot, I considered Paul George, but he's only played 26 games, and I don't know how much longer he's going to be out, so I felt like I couldn't give him the spot. Most of the other front court players are not like first options on their teams, and I feel like that's better for an all-star starter, so I feel like Cat is the most fitting starter for the Western Conference. He's averaged 24.5, 9.5, and 3.5 on really good splits. 51, 43, 82 splits as really, really efficient. I mean, the Timberwolves, I wouldn't say that they're great, but they're good. You know, they're in a playoff/play-in spot, and it's been mostly due to Karl Anthony Towns, so we'll give him the final front court spot, I say, for the starters. Once again, we'll start off with the guards in the Western Conference. Number 1 will be Donovan Mitchell. He's averaging 26 points and 5 assists on 45, 35, 88 splits. That's really efficient. I think we all know that Donovan Mitchell's kind of ascended into superstar status over the last year or so. He's the key offensive option on a Utah Jazz team that has consistently been an elite top 4 team in the Western Conference. They have been struggling in the playoffs, but hopefully this year Utah can make some noise in the playoffs with the help of another Utah Jazz All-Star I will touch on later. The other guard spot I will give to Luka Doncic. He's been averaging 25, 8, and 9 on 44, 32, 72 splits. He's not playing quite as well as last year, honestly, but he set himself an extremely high bar. I mean, he made All-NBA first team last year, for Christ's sake, so I think this year he's just kind of forcing some questionable shots, and he's not letting the game come to him as much, but he has still led the Mavericks to a record that's good enough to be out of the play-in tournament. I think they're in the 6th seed as of right now, and he's done that with good stats and a lot of offensive responsibility, so easily a reserve for the All-Star team. So I just mentioned that the Utah Jazz would have another All-Star besides Donovan Mitchell, and obviously that is Rudy Gobert. He's averaging 15.5, 15, and 1 assist. We'll give him credit for that 1 assist. On 71% from the field and 68% from the line, which isn't too bad. He's a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, and he's quietly turning in one of his better seasons. He's averaging a career high in rebounds, almost a career high in points. He's second in the league in blocks per game, and he has the highest field goal percentage in the NBA at 71%. Rudy Gobert just perfectly fits his role. You know, some people's opinion on Gobert kind of soured in the last few years due to him getting played off the court in the playoffs, but I disagree with that hate. Gobert is the Jazz defense. The Jazz have to funnel everything to Rudy Gobert because they aggressively close out on defense on shooters, and they switch almost everything on defense. With more wing defenders, I honestly think the Jazz could improve their defense by giving Gobert less of a responsibility on the defensive end, but, you know, all that being said, Gobert is definitely an all-star. The second front court spot I will give to Paul George. He's been averaging 25, 7, and 5.5 on, you know, not the greatest efficiency, 42% from the field, 32% from the three-point line, but 88% from the free throw line is obviously really good. Playoff P or pandemic P, that is the question. PG-13 has had to shoulder an insane amount of offensive responsibility with Kawhi out for at least the foreseeable future of this season. The insane amount of responsibility, I guess, explains his slight inefficiency, but the two-way impact of Paul George has kept a depleted Clippers team over 500 until he went down with his injury. I mean, before he was injured, the second best player on any given night for this Clippers team was Reggie Jackson, Isaiah Hartenstein, or, I don't know, Terrence Mann, Marcus Morris. I mean, it's a depleted team. Without injury, he maybe could have been a starter, but definitely a worthy reserve. This last front court position I think was the hardest choice I had to make for this entire video. I was deciding between AD and a pair of Warriors players, Draymond and Wiggins. Despite AD's stats looking way better than I expected this year, I think a Warriors player has to get in here. If a Warriors player doesn't get this spot, the Lakers would have more All-Stars than the Warriors, despite having a winning percentage more than 20% lower than the Warriors. I honestly can't make the decision between the two, so I'm just going to kind of cop out and lump either Draymond or Wiggins here. I guess if I had to pick one, I would pick Wiggins, just because, like, I think he's a better story. He had the breakout season. He's scoring 19 points per game on really good efficiency. He's got good length on defense as well. Draymond's doing his normal thing of averaging like 8, 7, and 7 without shooting the ball much, being a great ball mover and screen setter on offense and the glue on defense, but if I had to give it to one person, I guess I would give it to Andrew Wiggins. For my two wildcard spots, I think I'm just going to go with the Phoenix starting backcourt of CP3 and Devin Booker. CP3 is leading the league with 10 assists per game. He's scoring 15 points per game on his average efficiency, and he's picking up 2 steals per game as well. Any NBA fan knows that CP3 does more than just what shows up on the stat sheet, and the 36-year-old deserves to be on every single All-Star ballot in my opinion. Devin Booker has also averaged close to 24, 5, and 5 on 44, 41, 88 splits. I mean, he's making tough pull-up shots, mid-range shots, and long-range shots on good efficiency. These two players led Phoenix to the NBA Finals last season and to an incredible 31-9 record this season. They're definitely both All-Stars. Talking about a few injury replacement guys, it sucks that there's not more spots on the All-Star team because I would love to see both Wiggins and Draymond make the team, but there's bound to be a need for another player due to injury, so they might both get in regardless. Like I said, AD was putting up better numbers than I expected, but he's missed a lot of time. The Lakers have actually finally strung together some wins when he's been injured, so he only may make it as a replacement player. And then one final player I want to give a shout out to is DeJounte Murray. He's averaging 18, 8, and 9 on the season. He's a top 5 player in triple doubles on the season, and although he struggles a little bit with creating outside the paint, he's crafty and finishes well when he actually gets into the paint. If he can improve his jumper while staying elite on the defensive end, he will be a future perennial All-Star. So yeah, those are my picks for the All-Star game as of right now. I don't know, what is today's date? January 13th or something like that. It's a mix of who I think is going to make it personally and who I think the experts will eventually pick to make the final roster. But, you know, there's still a month until the All-Star game, so there's a lot to change. There's a few hard decisions that I had to make, but I think I'm going to stick with them. I'm pretty confident in them, and, you know, we'll go with it. So thanks so much for watching. Tell me in the comments if you agree with the All-Star predictions that I made. And if you do, you should just like the video, subscribe. If you don't agree with my picks, you should still like the video and subscribe, but also comment saying who you think should make it over the players that I chose. Thanks for watching. Peace.
It's caught in the crossfire.